In 2021, Netflix released one of the most revolutionary TV series ever produced in history. A TV show that will take the world by the guts and get everybody hooked on each episode due to the intensity of these episodes. And of course, I'm talking about Squid Game. Squid Game completely dominated the entertainment world with 142 million views in its first month on Netflix for its first season, followed by 68 million views in its first week for the second season of Squid Game. And this show completely obliterated all of their competition, making it #1 for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. And until today, I probably believe that they already reached the billion views. Yeah, it's that big. Many trends came out of the show, such as playing the same games as the players in Squid Game. For example, the first game where you have to run, then freeze, and not get shot. Pretty dark. Squid Game became so famous that everybody recognizes it only with this picture right here. But on top of that, that show was also an extreme work of art in all shapes and ways, going from true inspiration from historical moments, for example, to very harsh truth the creator himself is trying to tell us, the audience, and all of that with a little bit of dark secrets in South Korea. Because oh, trust me, there are many. And throughout this video, I'll be telling you all of the secrets about the Squid Game. Everything literally that transpired and that inspired the creator of the Squid Game to include it into the show. And gradually throughout this video, we'll be going in levels. So level 1 will go pretty soft. I'll be just telling you like a few details here and there, for example. But once we get to level 6, I mean, you just better hang on tight because it's about to be very dark, I'm telling you. This shit is about to be insane. But before that, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It is very important for the YouTube algorithm gods. And on that note, hang on tight, because this train is about ready to roll. Let's go! It's the story of Seng Jang-woon, a divorced father living with his mother who is deeply into debts, and he is constantly to be better. But he has an addiction to gambling, which means that every time he wins something, he loses it right away, and he constantly needs to borrow money to gamble some more. And so he gets himself stuck into that circle, that vicious circle of always gambling money that you don't have in a way. And don't forget, kids, do not gamble. It's an absolutely toxic environment and toxic traits or hobby that anybody can be doing. But I'm telling you, it is not worth the game. I'm done with that culture of losing your money by playing a game or two. We've all seen those streamers online, on Kick for example, and they be bidding online sums that sometimes they don't even have, like $50,000, $100,000, maybe even $1 million or so. And they lose it in the blink of an eye.
No! Oh my god! Oh my god! No! I just lost 30K. I just lost 30K. Oh my god! Bro, what the fuck is this? Bro!
And that is what I call an addiction in a way. And one day in the subway station, he is invited to play a series of children's games for a chance at large cash prizes. Accepting the offer, he is taken to an unknown location where he finds himself among 455 other players who are in deep financial trouble. The players are made to wear green tracksuits and are kept under watch at all times by masked guards in pink jumpsuits, with the game overseen by the frontman who wears a black mask and black uniform. And the players soon discover that by somebody losing their life, they actually get more money into the big bank, for example. And each death contributes to almost 100 yen, which makes in total, if everybody dies and there's one person standing, for example, he's going to be winning 45.6 billion yen, which is in dollars close to like $40 million. $39.86 million precisely. Ji-yoon allies with other players, including his childhood friend Cho Sang-woo and North Korean defector Kong Sang-byung. I know I'm completely gonna be obliterating some of the names in here, but hang on tight with me, guys. We're all in this. So his friends are trying to survive the games with him, so they ally themselves to try to survive the game's physical and physiological twists, while a police officer is trying to infiltrate the games as one of the guards to find his missing brother. And to win, the participants have to play children's games so that at the end there will be one left, meaning only one survivor. I mean, can you imagine if that was literally the real life? That is pretty dark, I'm telling you. But we'll get to that throughout the video. Stay with me until the end. That's all I'm gonna say. Squid Game in its entirety was very well thought and also very well played by the actors. Heads up to the actors because they did a great job, and some of their actors actually also became super famous just from the Squid Game. For example, their main actor also played another role in a Hollywood movie called Star Wars. I bet everybody knows about that one. Going from the suits everybody was wearing to the decoration of the seats to the deep simplicity, intensity that the actors are projecting, it was a true work of art. And just like I always say, he grabs you by the guts and he shakes you like this. And throughout the first season, it's not actually too long and it's not too short. It's a couple episodes of like 40 to an hour, which makes it perfectly for everybody's viewing in a way. And throughout these episodes, we see people dying left and right. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. And each character that goes through that death in a way has a very close-up shot on them where, you know, it's not just their death in a way, but it's a death of a whole life. So you get to see that whole life perspective in a way, and you see that, you know, ending. And from there, everybody starts to get their favorite characters. My favorite character is, of course, Jiyoon, you know, from the very beginning, but other people would be going for other actors, for other characters, you know. And every character, in a way, represents a side of society, in a way. And that is literally trying to tell us about all of those dark sides of the society that exists nowadays in our own society in a way. And as the audience, you actually get to see how much debt the people are actually in and how twisted the children's games are getting, you know. And don't forget about the huge gap that there is between the very rich, very wealthy people and the very poor people. And all I can say is, damn. That gap is pretty huge. Squid Game is a super realistic story around a survival game where everything is complicated, but the story is so well made that it captivates everybody that watches it. And if we have to thank anybody for all of this work, it's basically the creator of the Squid Game. And all that because he worked on it for more than 10 years. And if you have to ask me, why 10 years? Why so long? Well, welcome to the first level, because in this level we're going to be talking about the creator of the Squid Game, and I'm talking about Mr. Hwang Dong. Mr. Hwang Dong is a very famous screenwriter in South Korea, more famously known for making movies. He started by studying journalism in South Korea, then he traveled to the US to do his cinematography studies. He would start his career by making small movies, but then after a few years in 2007, he brings his own new first movie to light, and that was called My Father. This story is the story of an adopted South Korean living in the US that goes back to Korea to retrace his real life and retrace his biological father who was in jail. And from the get-go, it was a total smash, total hit. And from this first movie, you can already say that that creator, Hwang Dong, is actually very interested in making stories that are very touchy and that brings a little sense of reality into those movies about his own country in a way. All of that with a sprinkle of politics and societal problems, and which makes his work a little bit more heavier and a little bit more detailed than the regular movies you might be watching out there, you know? Like, you gotta really be concentrated on every single detail when you're watching one of his movies, for example. But his next movie after that one actually made a true impact in South Korea and all over the world at the same time. And I'm talking about Silenced in 2011. This movie absolutely shocked everybody, shocked people, shocked the people of South Korea, people of the world, literally everybody that watched it. And why did it shock everybody? To the point where even new laws were incorporated into the South Korean laws, you know? The movie Silence denounces the content of the book called The Children of Silence that tells the real-life story of Inua. And this story is pretty horrible in South Korea. It's the story of a school for deaf children that's full of violence, perverts, and torture towards handicapped kids. And during those years, when the real-life events happened, an investigation was of course opened, and a bunch of people were arrested in 2005. But a short time after that day, some of those people got arrested, but a short time after, getting arrested and all of that, they actually get released as soon as they got arrested, like pretty much the same day, for example. And they all went back to work at the same school. Like, what the hell? Can you imagine? There's all the proof you need, all the evidence you need that those people actually did some stuff to those handicapped children, and the justice said, you know what, it's out of our jurisdiction and there's no proof whatsoever. And they just decided to let them go with just a tap on the shoulder, for example. Absolutely nonsense, I'm telling you, nonsense. But then, when I think of all the schools or all of the per se schools that existed even in here in the US, I heard about some schools that existed where if you had a troubled kid or whatever, like he's being an ass or whatever, and he needs a little bit more training in a way, and he's a little bit of a delinquent in a way, then those parents, for example, would contact those schools, and those schools would come and literally kidnap your kid while they're sleeping, for example. And as soon as they open up their eyes, boom, they are in a total new environment that they don't know, very far from their home. And basically, it was kind of borderline torture at the same time too, So this story that happened in South Korea, it happened also over here in America as well. So it's not that far, but thank God some of the people that did that kind of stuff, that opened up those kind of schools or whatever, got caught and went to jail. But now let's get back to the story. And in this story, a new school teacher is assigned to this school, and he sees that something is wrong, and slowly but surely he starts to uncover the true reality of the situation. And of course, again, the same actor as later in the Squid Game, and I call Gong Hyo. This movie completely blew everyone's mind around the world, and most specifically South Korea, with more than 4.7 million entries at the box office. And everybody is absolutely shocked at the lack of justice on the people responsible for all of this, and also to how handicapped kids are actually left out to be not protected whatsoever by any laws. But thanks to the movie, now everybody was hooked on this case. Everybody. The case was reopened and the people concerned in the trials got called back. And from here, a lot of people got resentenced and a lot of people went to jail. And even the former principal, who was 63 years old at the time, got charged with sexual abuse and abuse of power and went to jail for 12 years. The movie in South Korean was named Dogami. And out of respect for that movie and out of the whole story, the new law that came out in 2011 was called the same way. And that new law actually indicates that handicapped children don't have to prove anything when they come to you and they tell you that they have been oppressed, for example, because they cannot protect themselves, and they cannot defend themselves against their oppressors in any shape or form. And that law also says that instead of the maximum of being sentenced on any kind of those crimes for 7 years, which was the maximum, well, now if you get caught for those same kind of crimes, you can actually even go for life to prison. And all of that is, of course, to help the kids that are suffering in those same kind of situations and that were silenced back then. And from all of this, we can see that this producer, it was literally his second movie. So that tells you a lot of the potential he had for the future. But he comes back in 2014 with a more lighter project, a more comedy project. And he started a comedy called Miss Granny. And basically it's a comedic version and it's a much softer, much less glory than The Substance, where a grandmother finds her 20-year-old body and starts a new life. And that brought 8 million entries in South Korea. I mean, for just a funny movie in a way, still made it. And in 2017, he made his fourth movie called The Fortress. It's a much more of a historical tale with some action. And you may have recognized one of the actors, Liu Gong, who also plays in Squid Game. But now in 2019, a new series called Round 6 is in production. Round 6 is the original name Netflix wanted to give to the Squid Game, because Squid Game is actually the name of a Korean children's game, and Netflix was told that. And they wanted to try and avoid something that was just known by the South Korean in a way. And that's why, they were like, we're gonna go for Round 6. But thank God, at the end when it came out, it was called something else, And thank God they didn't call it Round 6, because I don't think it would have worked if it was called that way too. But why did it take so long to actually come up with the Squid Game? And why did the story actually start in 2009 versus 2019, Originally, the script was completely rejected. No one wanted the script, which was also originally intended to be a movie. The story was too violent and too unrealistic, and no one was truly interested in it. And even Hwang, the creator of the Squid Game, actually put it in the drawer and completely forgot about it. And maybe it was all for the best, Maybe it wasn't the right time for the proper release of a big TV show just like that back in the day. And in the meantime, during those 10 years, he had time to actually make 3 movies. And in 2018, he took the project out of the drawer, and a friend of his who works at Netflix gave his script to the streaming platform. Netflix was up for it, except that it's a series platform, so they asked him to transform the script to adopt it into episode format, which he didn't like, but he still did it, He is not a series consumer, but he also admitted that he also watched a couple series here and there. For example, one of my best shows ever, Breaking Bad, yes, he watched it too. Also, he watched another TV show that I absolutely like, which is called Mindhunter. And just from the both, Breaking Bad and Mindhunter, just from both TV shows, you can already say what kind of combination is gonna come up from watching those two kind of shows, Because it's a very psychological thriller kind of show, and it's a very action / everything you want in Breaking Bad, And so he said it's gonna take him 6 months to transform the script of the movie into a series. And right up to the production and the directing of the series, he'll admit that he lost teeth because it stressed him so much. Like, this work stressed him out so bad that he started even losing teeth. Crazy.
I read that you were so stressed during the first series of Squid Game that you lost 6 teeth.
I think that 8 or 9 teeth.
8 or 9 teeth.
And if the story is so rich of so many touchy subjects and so many accurate subjects, it's because the director actually was inspired by his own life in a way. By himself, by his friends, by his uncles, by his mom, by anybody that encountered him ever. At one point, he didn't even have the money to do nothing, to the point where he even sold his own laptop for like $650 just to make something out of whatever he had, But you can just say that he is a very determined man that pays close attention to whatever details he can see. And I'm telling you, we should all be inspired a little bit more, just like Mr. Hwang, With Squid Game's success, inevitably comes speculation. The term plagiarism was used a lot, but after that, he came and he answered. And he said that when he was completely broke, and even before that, he used to spend a lot of his time in cafes reading mangas. And he also watched a lot of anime. So you can imagine that he got inspired by a lot of them at the same time. And in my opinion, including children's games into these Squid Game in a way was very genius and dark option, but very genius to do. Allowing those children's games into a survivor horror game in a way allows for a more creepy and a more disturbing atmosphere in a way. And nobody can absolutely conceive that, a children's game can be so deadly. Especially since the first game, for example, the 1, 2, 3, when they had to run, then freeze, and then run again. That way they don't get shot. And basically what the creator says, that the simpler the games are, the simpler the audience can focus not on the game and not on like literally how the proper way to play the game or whatever, but literally focus more on the characters going through the games, you know. The character's task is therefore reinforced, and it's an extremely interesting twist in terms of writing. But to come back to the manga he saw just before, there's one he didn't mention, and yet everyone thought they must have read or watched it, because even I thought he probably watched it or read the manga, you know. And it's the closest to Squid Game, because Battle Royale and Kakumi is very well known, but it's pure survival and in itself is just the basic principle and the challenge. The violence and the betrayal are a little too sophisticated. Human psychology is certainly under scrutiny, but the similarities are few in the end. The story of Kaiji, a young unemployed loser with no future, addicted to gambling, who enjoys scratching luxury cars because he can't stand seeing other people's comfortable lives. Suddenly, a loan shark shows up at his door telling him he has to pay off his debts, and he absolutely cannot afford it, and it's obviously a huge scam. But this loan shark uses his acting skills to convince him to go on a clandestine boat to win a huge jackpot that would allow him to erase his entire debt and even come out rich on this boat. Guys like him are in debt up to their necks. They have to play rock, paper, scissors using cards, collect stars, and avoid ending up in a room where their fate would be worse than death. Strategy, suspense. We start seeing the similarities when it comes to asking somebody to go to a place and win a huge jackpot and erase all of their debts, you know. Sus. And then they go to a place where there's a lot of people, a little bit like the beginning of Squid Game, you know? Then the game of rock, paper, scissors is a simple game to understand. It draws a parallel with the children's games that we can see in the series. It's from Kaiji's second test where we begin to see real similarities when he crosses a bridge that separates two buildings and whose fall is fatal. And that also reminds you of one of the games on the Squid Game. It's also during the test that we see people witnessing the test of the rich people who gets delighted in seeing the people try to win a little bit of money. And again, I don't know if you see any similarities again, if you can sniff them out, but we get pretty much the same scene of rich people looking down on poor people. And it's absolutely the same thing in Squid Game, you know? And I find a lot more similarities with that manga than with the other ones that he already mentioned, you know? So is he trying to hide something? I don't know. Also, in the anime of Kaiji, we can see that at the entrance of the high school, there is a triangle, a square, and a round symbol that also very much resembles the symbols of the soldiers in the Squid Game. And you're gonna tell me it's probably a coincidence, but no, like it's getting too similar to be a coincidence, you know, like come on. And this was also used as a hierarchy for the soldiers, you know, like if you were around, if you had a circle, you were the lowest. If you had a triangle, you were the middle. And if you were the square, you were the higher up, you know. And one of the biggest, again, similarities is the loan sharks, how they are all dressed the same and how all the guards are dressed the same in Squid Game. A lot of similarities in between the two. Again, and we've all seen in different mangas and in different work from Asian or Japanese culture, there's always going to be those loan sharks, those loan mafia, whatever, coming to get your money and putting you into debt or whatever. They all exist in every culture, and we all know those family members that end up in a very dire situation where they end up losing a lot of money. And now they owe a lot of money to a very troublesome people, you know? And those loan sharks, they end up pursuing them until they end up like, you know, selling a kidney or whatever because they don't have money. And even though Korean laws has laws regulating debt ratio and punishing those who exceed them. And all of this is to prevent excessive over-debt among the Korean population. But the Korean mafia and criminal organizations still engage in fraudulent practices, such as loans with monstrous interest rates, and they have several techniques for doing this. People are also forced to pay to protect their businesses. Just like in here in the US, we had the mafia go into a few businesses and threatening them, hey, can you gotta give me money so that I can protect you, and if you don't, I will actually hurt you. Basically, the same system is still happening in South Korea, and people are trying to go against that, but it's still hard to try and stop it. But it is very complicated to prevent trafficking and clandestine and criminal practices, which means that in 2021, according to a study, the debt held by the Korean population exceeded 100% of the Korean GDP. Citizens are in debt to the bone, all to finance mortgage loans, but also their children's education. Yes, school over there is very pricey, and education is very important. So when it's very important and it's that pricey, people are literally not even living at that point, because all of the money they have will go towards either financing their mortgages or financing their children's education. And now that we've seen a little bit of the inspiration about all of this story of the Squid Game, and now that we've seen a little bit of the origin of the Squid Game and all of that, let's go a little bit more. Let's go to level 3. Oh no. And whether it's the first season or the second season, the casting is absolutely top notch, you know. Very nice options of actors that they got for the first season and the second season at the same time. And well before the BTS or even Stite Kids, Taeyeon starred in a very well-known drama called Iris in 2009. But it was in 2017 that everything changed. Taeyeon was accused of using marijuana, and it's a very serious offense back in South Korea. Like, you can even get locked up for just smoking, you know? And that earned him an immediate banishment from the entertainment world. His world collapsed over a job on a website. And basically just for that, he had to say sorry to everybody, say sorry to the population of South Korea. And literally, they took him from all the way up to all the way down in the matter of a few years again. Just like they brought him up, they brought him down. And after they forced him to give up his career and his group, he announced on Instagram in 2023, he announced on an Instagram post that he officially left the group. And only 2 days after that, he actually attempted to, off himself in a way. And this is also to tell you the monstrous pressure that K-pop idols over there get from their own population. He went through a trial for convictions. He also was sentenced to 10 months in prison with suspended sentences for so little. And I am absolutely outrageous to see that just for the fact that, he smoked a little bit of something that he was not supposed to, earned him 10 months in jail. Like, it's absolutely unbelievable and nonsense. In here, you've got people literally promoting that stuff day and night and nothing happens to them. And for something like that over there, like, it's absolutely craziness. Nonsense. Hopefully he gets his career back. He totally deserves it. South Korean people, shame on you for disrespecting him like that. Over something so small. I am sorry to tell you, South Korean, boo! But you should know that the group is going to have to endure a second huge blunder. That doesn't help him at all, because 2 years later in 2019, the other member, Suri, is involved in the Burlington Affair, a nightclub from hell where drugs were distributed to be used to abuse customers by taking photos and videos. Prostitution, sexual abuse, violence, corruptions, yeah, literally the whole shebang, And basically, the whole TOP situation is very, very dramatic, and a lot of drama is all around it. But the director of the Squid Game asserts his authority over his acting choices, especially since for him, the TOP sentence has been served and he no longer needs to apologize. He even says it was very brave of him to have accepted the role, because in the end, the famous Thanos in the second season of Squid Game, who gets high on ecstasy before each chest, I know, that character was crazy. With his unbearable fallen and indebted relationship throughout the entire second season, could only be played by him according to the director. It was a double-edged choice, as if he were continuing to be punished, but at the same time, it will reopen the doors to the entertainment world for him. Knowing that his performance and presence were praised and highly appreciated, T.O.P. himself said in interviews that he feels close to the character as he continues to repent and be accepted by the Korean people. And personally, I just think that they should all stop their shit and just let him live, because holding all of that on him just because he smoked a little joint, you know? I mean, come on. And the fact that literally it's been here since 2017, like, come on. It's been literally 8 years since that happened. Like, can't people let it go and just move on to something else, you know? So part of life to move on to something else. And there's even an interview of one of the other characters in the Squid Game. There were questions asked by an interviewer towards that character, and the question was about actually another character, the character of, you know, T.O.P., the character of Thanos. And as soon as he was going to start talking about him, somebody else came to tell him, hey, can you actually shut the fuck up and not say nothing, actually? So you can still see until today, 8 years after everything happened, and still it feels like it's taboo to talk about whatever is concerning the character of Thanos, you know? And on that, everybody could see clearly the discomfort of everybody that's going around and the abuse that's still surrounding T.O.P. And you can still see the clear censorship over that character. And then when you jump to another character, another very respected character by the name Lee Bun, he's a bit of an untouchable actor in Korea. And yet you should know that he suffered a lot of media backlash. He's known worldwide for making many movies, exceptional thrillers, action movies like I Saw the Devil. However, I want you to be ready because it's a lot of information to take in. He is currently married and has a child, but many people have tried to bring him down through blackmailing him in 2014, where the singer called Derry and her model friend Lee Jun asked him for 5 billion won in exchange for not releasing a compromising video during a drunken party. And that actor didn't let it go. He wanted to take them to trial, and he wanted to get remorse over those people. And just for that, they both got charged to 1 year in prison for the shit they did. But after that, they still asked for clemency towards the actor, which was of course granted, and then at the end they still didn't have to go to jail. But at least they learned their lesson and they learned to not fuck with it, you know? And just for that, they had to write an apology letter of like multiple pages, and he got it, and from there they moved on. Moreover, this actor plays the #1 player in season 2. But the other actor who plays the #1 player in season 1, the little old man, well, he's actually accused of sexual assault at his old age. And yes, he's currently 72 years old, and his name is Oh Young-soo. And this actor was found guilty of a crime dating back to 2017 of sexual abuse of a woman. And yes, he allegedly hugged and kissed her on the cheek inappropriately without her consent. And with that, he's going to get jail time with a suspended sentence and 40 hours of training on the prevention of sexual violence. I am telling you, they don't joke about that stuff around in South Korea. You better not touch anybody, I'm telling you. But just because you're famous and all doesn't mean you can go around and start kissing everybody and all of that. That is, I totally understand. But right after that, he wins a Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor in a way, thanks to the Squid Game. But from there, we jump on to the main actor of the Squid Game. And I'm talking about Song Ji-hoon. Squid Game for him is literally his gateway to the international scene, because the actor was very well known in the 90s, but between 2000 and 2020, he only did a few roles. No dramas either. Knowing that this is almost the most profitable thing but he remained a bit stuck in the 90s. He did a few roles, of course, which allowed him to show off his acting talent, mostly in serious films, but he was originally a model. He was spotted, then he went into acting in the 90s. And that's why Wong Yum chose him. He broke away from that characteristic handsome model side and gave him a loser role, and it suited him like a glove. He takes on the role perfectly, adding to the mature side of the cast selection for this series, especially in the first season, but you should know that he too has had some somewhat salty tabloid press, like in 1999 when he was arrested for drunk driving on several occasions. Then in the second season, we have the incredible Park Eun-gu, who plays the role of Yoon-ju, a trans woman. It sparked quite a bit of debate around the world. Many were outraged by the fact that no trans actress had been chosen for this role. Obviously, the director spoke about it, and he says, "From the moment I started creating the character of Yeonju, I knew that discussions on the subject would emerge. At first, I really thought about hiring a trans actress, but when we started our research in Korea, we quickly realized that there weren't any, almost no openly trans actors, let alone gay ones, because unfortunately the LGBTQ community is still marginalized and neglected in our societies. It was also impossible to find someone authentic for the casting." So that's my opinion, don't be offended, but given that Yeonju hasn't yet transitioned in the series, choosing a man to play this role in itself doesn't seem like a big deal. The important thing in the end is that we have a trans character in this story, and that highlights the theme of transsexuality and acceptance, because this character participates in the Squid Game to pay for his transition and will receive a lot of support from his teammates during the game. Above all, he's a key character in an extremely well-known series. This isn't the first time the director has made a point of highlighting minorities that are overlooked in Korea. In the first season, there was moving on from that level, we'll go to level 4, where we also recognize that doll from the first game in the Squid Game. That doll exists actually in Korea. It comes from a school textbook illustration from the 70s and 80s. So you have the flower that is a symbol of Korea and the life-sized version of the doll that actually exists also in South Korea. It's located north of Seoul in the county of Seoul, and many tourists currently go there to take pictures of it. And from there, let's move another level, because that level is, easy, but still, let's move on to the next level. And in here, you may not know, but South Korea has a lot of geopolitical problems. It has experienced dark periods, one in particular of which inspired the director to create the concept of the game and the sets. Among the most obvious elements are the seemingly endless staircases. We see a visual reference to the stairs. This representation is extremely well known and used in many pop cultural works, such as in Berserk. In the first volumes, there is also an inspiration from Ricardo Moralia Jora. We can clearly see that in terms of coloring and style, the mixtures of the two gives us this series of stairs so legendary in the series. And there are two elements of Korean history that influenced the creator of Squid Game to write it. When we learn the story of the main character Ji-yoon, we learn that he worked for more than 10 years in an assembly plant called Dragon Motors, except that due to a company restructuring, protests took place. They became very violent and some people actually died, some of his colleagues, forcing him to resign and leave the protests. And that is why he didn't even attend the birth of his child, because he was in the middle of protesting. That's when he began to lose everything, and this story which he wrote for the character has a few true elements which almost identical to the real events. We are in 2009 in Pyeongtaek, and an incredible strike is about to begin for the workers at the Songgong factory, which by the way means dragon. We therefore see the direct wing that is made to the Dragon Motors, the company that employs Ji-yoon in the series. The Suyang company is in difficulty in May 2009. It will then be taken over by banks and private investors, but this involves the layoff of more than 40% of its workforce. That is more than 2,600 jobs. This announcement is a disaster for the workers who decided to strike and occupy the factory for more than 77 days. Except that this occupation will end in a bloodbath. The workers in the factory will fight with the police using steel pipes, except that on the other side, rubber bullets, cops and helicopters will spray tear gas on the striking factory employees. It is said that union activists will be particularly attacked. Many lost their lives, and psychological and physical injuries have resulted in several cases. Because you should know, they will not win their case. And justice that day was totally on the side of the company. They totally claimed that all of that was just an outburst of crazy people, and they did not absolutely do anything for the rioters or whoever was protesting, and they absolutely took the side of the companies, you know. And let's all remember that South Korea is also a very, very capitalist country, so they're always going to be on the side, on the way of companies, you know, and none of their workers absolutely won a case. And worse even, a lot of them actually got prosecuted and sent to jail for what they actually did that day. They wanted to make people look like they're incompetent for union activism, overheld by the reality of the world and who had lost their minds. This is a statement by Chung Kong, who 5 years after the events remained perched at the top of a factory chimney for 100 days to protest the court decision in favor of the company. He was able to eat thanks to supplies given to him with the help of a small nurse, but was also said to be subject to hallucinations. He even said that the rope used to bring him his basket of food sometimes transformed into a snake. And so for people just like him, watching the Squid Game is actually a trauma to him. It affects them actually enormously, and basically compared to the second movie that he made on those kids that got very bad treated, you know, and where laws even came into action and people started getting prosecuted and all of that, the hopes of the Squid Game was for actually those survivors to actually have stuff happen in the country again, like new laws getting created and all of that because of the Squid Game. But still, nothing of that happened. So it tells you that, you know, that system is very much rooted into everybody, and no one is actually able to do anything to protect those people that went through what they went through in 2009. And from there, we even jump one level higher, because this level is the latest one. And I'm telling you, you don't want to hear this, but if you want, you're crazy. And now we're going to be uncovering South Korea's most darkest problem ever, and it all starts with Brother Home. In 1975, in Busan, South Korea, is an institution called Brother Home, and it's supposed to be a charity welfare center, but it is actually a concentration camp. Thousands of Koreans will be crammed together and enslaved. They will suffer torture, sexual abuse, and humiliation, and many of them will die. At that time, the political regime put in place wants to purify Korea. And basically, South Korea at the time was getting itself ready to welcome the Olympics. And when you welcome the Olympics in your country, you want to make sure that your country looks good towards the international community. And South Korea's option to do that is to cleanse their people, you know? So whenever you would see, for example, somebody that's homeless, or somebody that will look homeless, or somebody that's going through a bad financial period, or something that's going through a bad period in his life, in his emotional life, or something like that. Basically, anything was a reason back in the day in South Korea for you to actually end up in one of those concentration camps, you know, because the reason is, if they get you in there, they can cleanse you, they can bring you back to society very stronger in a way. But what was actually going on in there is a lot of, you know, people hitting people, and a lot of people not eating, and basically all of the torture that you can imagine. That's what was going on in that Brother Home place, institution, you know. And from the pictures we can see online, it looks kind of like a military base in the mountains. So even to get there or to get out of there, you don't have nothing close to you. So that whole situation back in the day was pretty terrible. A lot of people got themselves caught in there, and they spent years. And at the end, Not all of them survived. A lot of people actually died from there, and they just got thrown like a couple of dogs, you know, which is absolutely horrible. And a bunch of their employers or something like that didn't even go to jail for that long. And if they went for like 2 years and they got out, and then they moved on with their life. So basically it feels like no one actually got really prosecuted for the crimes that were committed during those era, for, you know, all of that, for geopolitical problems and all of that, which is absolutely crazy. And the fact that we see that in the Squid Game, in a place where, you know, you are accepting everybody that has a financial issue and owes a lot of money towards government or towards somebody like a loan shark or whatever, it's crazy to think that South Korea at some point in its time thought that this option was the best option they could go with. And the fact that we have that absolute depiction in the Squid Game is absolutely amazing, because maybe we didn't get to see some laws getting transformed in there and all of that, but maybe that is in the work, and it will happen in the latest years, you know, hopefully. And on that note, guys, it's been a long video. Your boy has a lot of editing to do so that this video gets released in time, you know. So hopefully you guys let me know in the comments below, what do you think about this video? Let me know what you think about the kind of origins of the Squid Game and its darkest secrets. Let me know which level you like the most, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.